Hello, and thank you all so much for coming to this talk. My name is Rich Bowen, and I'm on the board of directors at the Apache Software Foundation. I also work at AWS as an open source strategist. And I attended my first technical conference in 1996. And since then, I've attended hundreds of conferences and attended hundreds of talks. And I am sad to say that many of those talks were terrible. And I want to give you some tips. Now, I want you to understand that I don't have all the answers. I just have my opinions, some suggestions. Each one of you needs to develop your own style of giving a presentation. And this matters because everyone that's in this room has a story. You have a message. And you need to be able to present it in a way that people will actually listen. So what the first tip that I'm going to give you is that I recommend that you find a speaker that you really admire, a talk that you attended this week or at some other event that inspired you, and think about why. So this is my guy. This is Damian Conway. He is the best conference presenter I've ever attended. He is engaging. He's hilariously funny, and you remember everything he says. And it's been 20 years since I last saw him on stage, and I still think about him when I give presentations. I try to be like him. This is another one. This is Mark Jason Dominus. He gave a presentation about 25 years ago in which he told me, and I felt like he was talking to me, he told me why my presentations were terrible and what I could do to make them better. And that's him playing a harmonica on stage, which is something that has stuck in my mind all of these years. And he's the reason why I have the confidence to give this talk, and why hopefully you'll laugh at some of my jokes. Now, if this was your first conference, maybe you saw Harish yesterday, and he gave what I thought was one of the best talks yesterday. And also, coincidentally, he did almost all of the things that I'm going to tell you that you should do in your presentations. So if you attended Harish's talk, think about the tips that I'm giving you and relate them to what Harish did yesterday. Okay, so this is me giving a talk 6 years ago, back before my beard turned gray. And so the first thing I want to tell you about is why I care about this. There's two main reasons why I care about this topic. One is that I attend a lot of conference presentations and I don't want to be bored. I want to be entertained, but I also want to learn. I want to remember what you tell me. So that's the first reason why I'm giving this presentation, because as I said, everyone in this room has a presentation in them. You have a story to tell, and I want you to tell it well. The second reason, the deeper reason why I'm giving this talk is that I care passionately about open source. And when you give your talk about open source, I want your audience to listen. I want them to remember. I want them to catch your passion, but I also want them to remember your points. I want them to remember the story that you're telling and then go from your talk and start doing. So that's why I care about this. All right, so diving in, I'm going to give you 8 practical tips to make your conference presentation better. The first tip is that you should know what your talk is about. Now, that may sound like a stupid thing to say, but you should have in your mind every moment that you're on stage, the one thing that you want your audience to remember, the thing that you want them to do when they get home, the thing that they want to tell their friends about. That should be in your mind the entire time that you're talking. Because if you don't know what your talk is about, then I won't know either when I'm done listening. Okay, so if somebody missed your talk and you go outside the talk and they said, "What was your talk about?" What is the one sentence that you will tell them that your talk is about? That should be in your mind the whole time that you're talking. Now, often this is framed as a call to action. Call to action means, what do I want each one of you to do when you leave this room? Well, what I want each one of you to do is to think about the story you want to tell and think about effective ways to tell it and ways to do your presentation that will keep it in everyone's mind. That's my call to action. I want you to give better talks. You should know what your call to action is. Also, you should be excited about your talk. If you're not excited about your talk, if you're not excited about your topic, then your audience is going to be looking at their phones. They're going to be bored. They're going to think, maybe I should have attended that other talk because that sounded more interesting, because this speaker clearly doesn't care about what they're talking about. So that's point number one. Point number two is don't tell me your life story. Far too frequently, I get into a talk and the presenter spends the first 10 minutes telling me their resume. Now, if your talk is in fact about your life story, that's different, obviously. But I am in your talk to hear about your topic, not to read your resume. Now, some people, well, let me say, so when I got on stage, I told you my name. I told you very briefly my title, but that's not what you're interested in. And then I told you why I care about this, which is that I have been attending conference presentations for 26 years and most of them were terrible. And that was it. That's all I told you about myself. And that's enough. Tell me why you're on stage and then move on to your topic. Your slides, oh wait, no, I skipped something. Let me say, there are people who feel like when they get on stage, they have to convince you that they are qualified to give the talk. And I understand that. And this is especially true for new presenters, first-time presenters. But I want to encourage you to remember that there are 3 reasons you don't have to do that. One is that the conference selection committee chose your talk, so they thought you were qualified. The second is that everyone sitting in these seats chose your talk to attend, so they think you're qualified. And the third reason is you're qualified. You're passionate. You presented the talk. You have the qualifications. So you don't have to persuade me of that. All right, point number 3, your slides are not your presentation. Your slides are cue cards. They are a way to keep the audience looking at you. And so don't spend so much time putting together your slide presentation that you forget your message. So here's a picture of my cat, and my cat's up there so that you'll look at the screen, but also so that you'll look at me. I change the slides frequently so that you don't get bored and look away. If you have a slide on the screen for 15 minutes, then people are going to lose interest and they're going to look away. So, I also have lots of notes up here. I'm cheating, and I encourage you to do that as well. But your slides are not your presentation. You are your presentation. Now, I'm also cheating because this is not a technical talk. And when you're giving a technical talk, your slides are important. You do need to have useful stuff on the slides. And I strongly encourage you not to make me read your slides. And even worse, don't do this number. Don't do the thing where I read my slides to you. I can't tell you how many talks I've attended where the presenter stood with his back to me and read his slides to me. If you want to write a blog post and I'll read that, but that's not why you're on stage. If your slides are the presentation, then what are you here for? So, you know. Oh, and while we're at it, here's a slide that was at a presentation that I was at last week. And this was supposed to convey useful technical information. And I have no idea what's going on here. And I can't read any of it. And yeah, don't do this. I would even go so far as to tell you to do what Jim did. Don't put words on your slides at all, except when they are conveying a very important point. The slides are, they're giving a visual reminder of what was said, but I want you to be listening to me, not reading what's going on behind my back. So, use words on your slides when they convey the specific idea that you want people to remember, and make that as brief as possible. Like Jim did, it was one word, and then a very brief explanation of that word, so that you're not reading while he's speaking. Now, back to technical presentations. If you are giving a technical presentation, sometimes you need to show code, and I presume that almost no one can read what's on the screen here. So what you want to do is highlight the specific portion of the code that you are talking about. Animations are good for this. If you want to zoom in on a particular piece that you're highlighting, I've attended several presentations this week where people had a terminal window that was scrolling past rapidly, and I have no idea what was going on. I couldn't follow it. It made me feel stupid. It made me feel like I was missing the point, but also that there was something that I was supposed to understand, but I didn't. And any time that you make your audience feel ignorant, that you make your audience feel stupid, then you have lost them, because they'll think, oh, this isn't for me. I'm not smart enough for this talk. And then they start thinking about something else. Anytime you allow your audience to start thinking about something else, then you have missed your opportunity. And I only have 20 minutes up here on stage. And in that time, I have to justify why I flew for 2 days to get here to my manager. Okay, point number 4. A presentation is a conversation. Now, in this particular case, I'm just talking and you're listening. If you're giving a technical presentation, you must always be prepared and willing for people to interrupt you and ask questions. Now, this is a bit of a balancing act, because I've been in presentations where one person in the audience essentially gave the presentation because they kept interrupting. They kept asking all of the distracting questions. Don't let someone hijack you. Practice saying, let's take that question into the hallway afterwards, since I have a lot of material to get through. So I'm always welcoming and eager for people to ask questions in my presentations, but you know, you want to be able to moderate that a little bit. So 2 additional points that I want to make here. One is that if, like me, you give a lot of remote presentations, this can be extremely difficult. Talking to a screen for an hour without being able to see the audience is exceptionally difficult. And if you have to do that, I recommend a couple things. One is to give the presentation to some of your friends. Give it to friends that understand the topic. Give it to friends that don't understand the topic. And this will allow you to refine your message and make sure that you understand your audience. The second thing that I recommend is that you record yourself and watch yourself. I'll come back to this in a minute because there's another point that I want to make around that. But recording yourself gives you a way to see whether you are engaging, whether you're maintaining eye contact. And speaking of eye contact, I recommend speaking to specific individuals in the audience, making eye contact and talking to that person. This does a couple things. One is it lets you see if people seem to be understanding, if they're engaging, if they're reflecting the emotion that you're trying to transmit. The other thing is, and this is a bit of a psychological trick, if you make eye contact with somebody, after you do that, they feel awkward about looking back at their phone. And so, you know, it's a bit of a social engineering here, trying to make people continue with that eye contact after you have done this. A little bit of a mean trick there. All right, an extremely practical tip here is use the microphone. Now, I cannot tell you how many talks that I have been to where the technician says, "Do you need the microphone?" And the speaker says, "No, I speak very loudly." And let me tell you, you don't. You may think that you do, but there is someone in your audience like me who is deaf. And that person is sitting there struggling to hear your words. And I find that very, very challenging. And if I cannot hear what is being said, I tune out, because you know, I've been struggling with deafness for 40 years, and I know that I'm not going to be able to hear you, and so I just tune out. The other thing about microphones is there is someone sitting over here who you cannot see who is in charge of the soundboard, and he knows exactly what he's doing, and he has tuned the microphone for this room so that the audio levels are correct, and you should trust them, and you should use the microphone so that the audience can hear you. These folks back here are the stars of the show in many ways, because without them, no one would be able to hear. So use the microphone. Let me give you some tips about using a microphone. You've attended some talks this week where people would hold the microphone here. That does not work. The microphone goes in front of your mouth. And I don't want to be condescending here, but I do encourage you to practice with the microphone. I encourage you to show up early in the morning before your talk. Make sure that your laptop connects to the projector. Make sure that the microphone is going to be handheld, or is it going to be on the podium. Make sure you know, so that you know how to anticipate whether your hands will be free. If you're somebody that talks a lot with your hands, it's a good thing to know. Now, I also encourage you to record yourself. Most of us hate the sound of our own voice, but if you take the time to record yourself and then listen, you will discover that you have annoying voice patterns that you were not aware of. And I have spent my entire career trying to remove some of these stop words, they're called in linguistics. They're these sounds that we make that fill the space between words. You'll notice that I still do these, but I've eliminated most of them by listening to myself talk. I used to do a podcast, and after I would do the recording, I would go back through and I would edit out all of those stop words from myself and the person that I was interviewing. Sometimes this would result in a 30, 40, 50% reduction in the total length of the recording, because some people have very annoying stop words that they're just not aware of. So record yourself, notice these things, practice not doing it. Also, if you tend to talk with your hands, be aware of that, watch yourself. If you tend to fiddle with things in your pockets, make sure that you empty your pockets when you get on stage. Don't wear your conference badge because it flaps, it goes against the microphone. These are all things that you will learn if you record yourself. Slow down. Pausing between words does not make you look like you don't know what you're doing. It makes you look thoughtful. So slow down, speak more slowly, particularly if you are presenting to an audience that does not share the same first language as yourself. If you speak more slowly, you will be more understandable. I recommend lots of slides. In a training that I recently attended, they called these beats. Every time you change the visual, it's a beat, and it keeps people's attention. This is Neil Peart. He's a drummer of a band that I'm very fond of, and he gives the beat to the music. And every time you change the slide, it's a beat. And that keeps people's attention. It keeps them hopefully from spending the presentation looking at their phones. I aim for one slide per minute because I think that's about how long I can keep people's attention with my voice. And so I try to put a new slide up. Sometimes I try to put a funny slide up so that people will laugh and other people will say, "What did I miss?" and they'll look up. It grabs attention again. A beat is not necessarily just a slide. It's also changing something else visually. So if I walk across the stage, that's a beat. It gets people's attention because something new is happening. And this is another beat. And my final point is that a picture is worth 1,000 words. I loved your presentation, Jim, because it was full of these photographs, and I would recognize some of the people, and I would recognize, oh, I was at that event, and I remember that presentation. And it's a way to convey information that is so much more valuable than trying to put a lot of words on the screen. I love this particular photograph. It was taken by a friend of mine named Chris. And every time I look at it, I think, what on earth was I discussing with Daniel at that moment? I can't remember. But it's clear that I'm very agitated and upset about something. I remember the event, and I remember him taking the picture and saying, "What are you all talking about?" But I don't remember what we were talking about. Slides should evoke images because many of us think in images, and it makes this visual connection between the point and this image that will stay in your mind, perhaps. And this one, it always makes me laugh. So that's it. That's what I have to communicate, and my slide clicker just quit working. But these are the things that I strongly encourage you to do if you want to give a presentation. Now, one of the things that I love about this specific conference is that it has so many first-time speakers. And I go to a lot of conferences where it's the usual suspects. It's the usual people on stage that I have seen giving the same presentation every year for the last 25 years. And I'm one of them, and I really appreciate conferences like this that focus on students and focus on new speakers. But you want to make sure that your speaking opportunities are successful so that you come away from it thinking, yeah, I did a good job and there were good questions, and this is something people will remember, because I want you to give that second talk. The second talk is the important one because it's the one that says, yeah, I can do this. And my entire career has come out of a conference talk that I gave in 1997. Everything has come from that. So I really encourage you to embrace these ideas. Think about what you're passionate about. Think about the story you want to tell. And these are my tips. Come up with your own. Come up with your own unique style. But give a presentation that engages people and makes them want to come back for more. This is my slides are all on GitHub. They'll be on the conference website sometime next week as well, I assume. But thank you all so much for your attention. I am completely out of time, and that's my last tip. Use every second that you have on stage because your message is valuable. Thank you so much.